On our newscast tonight, inter-Korean tensions reach a new high as the two sides exchange fire along the western border. Residents near the area are evacuated while the president called on the military to maintain full readiness. And it's finally confirmed President Park Geun-hye will visit China for its World War II ceremony, but may not attend the military parade, which U.S. President Barack Obama and other Western leaders chose to skip. A possible rate hike from the U.S. Fed, downside risks stemming from the devalued Chinese Yuan, and plunging global oil prices. With all these factors in mind, South Korea's finance minister says the government is preparing various countermeasures. All next on Primetime News. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Thursday, August 20th. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thanks for joining us.
Well, earlier today, the two Koreas exchanged artillery rounds at the western border.
And for the latest on escalating tensions at the DMZ, let's connect to our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-bin. Hyun-bin, give us the latest.
Well, Jay, it was 3:53 p.m. and 4:12 p.m. this afternoon when North Korea fired several artillery shells across the border targeting South Korea's propaganda loudspeakers right along the military demarcation line. Now, Seoul's defense ministry announced earlier Thursday that a shell firing was picked up on radar moving towards the southwestern front, but that there were no reports of damages. Now, an hour or so after the attack, the South Korean military responded with tens of 155 millimeter artillery rounds at the origin of attack.
Our military has upped its security condition to the highest level and is looking for any unusual movements from the north. We will strongly counter any future provocation from the north.
The ministry said an evacuation order was issued for nearby areas, and more than 2,000 residents were evacuated. Even the highest alert, Jindoke 1, was issued along some parts of the border.
And Hyun-bin, we hear that North Korea is not backing down at all. It actually demanded the South Korean side stop broadcasting propaganda messages at the border. And I heard we've given a timeline for that as well, right, Hyun-bin?
Sure did. The announcement came just an hour after the firing at 5 p.m. from North Korea's General Staff Department. Now, North Korea has said South Korea has 48 hours to stop broadcasting the messages or it will take strong military action. Now, in a separate letter, North Korea's ruling Workers' Party Secretary Kim Jongun urged the head of South Korea's National Security Office, Kim Kwon-jin, to halt all propaganda broadcasts, calling the messages a declaration of war. The letter also said North Korea would make efforts to improve inter-Korean ties if the South shuts down the loudspeakers. But South Korea's defense ministry says it has no plans to stop its anti-Pyongyang broadcasts. Now, North Korea has refused to admit or apologize for recent landmine explosions in the DMZ that severely injured two South Korean soldiers. Now, it was explosions that drove the South to resume the broadcast for the first time in 11 years. Now, since then, North Korea has demanded that the South tear down its loudspeakers or risk indiscriminate attacks as a consequence. Well, that's all I have for now. We'll bring more updates in our later newscast.
All right, thank you for those updates, Hyun-bin. Moving on to another story. At around 5 p.m. today, South Korean President Park Geun-hye was informed of North Korea's latest threat. An hour later, she convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council's Standing Committee.
And presiding the meeting herself, President Park was first briefed on the situation and the South Korean military's initial response from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the defense minister, and her top security advisor. The president then called on the military to firmly respond to the North's provocations and to maintain its full readiness.
She also asked the military to do everything it can to ensure the safety and protection of the South Korean people.
Now, given the tense situation, the time for talk seems to have passed between the two Koreas.
And for an in-depth analysis of the latest escalation of inter-Korean tensions, we have Brian Myers, Associate Professor of International Studies at Dongsa University, on the line with us. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, it looks like the days of the sunshine policy are far behind us as the Park administration seems to be focused more on responding aggressively to North Korean provocations. Do you think this is an ideal approach?
Well, let's keep in mind there were artillery exchanges during the Sunshine Policy years, too. There's certainly nothing ideal about the situation right now, but the Park administration is in kind of a tough position. On the one hand, it doesn't want hostilities to escalate. On the other hand, it can't just sit and take whatever aggression the North feels like handing out. The problem now, of course, is that the North may well feel the need to follow up on those recent threats and perhaps launch a more serious attack on those loudspeakers.
Well, Professor, I have two questions right now. Is it right for us to assume that the anti-North messages from the speakers is evoking the biggest and strongest reaction from the regime? That's one. And also, I think a lot of people are puzzled about South Korean government's reactions to the anti-leaflet flying. They were strongly against that from the civic groups, and now it seems the government is actively reviving the propaganda campaign. What's fueling this change in stance as well? Could you tell us about those 2 points, Professor?
Yeah, to start with the first one, the actual content of the propaganda is not all that important. Let's remember that average North Koreans now are increasingly accessing outside news sources anyway. What is really so offensive to North Korea is the very fact that the South Korean government is not showing respect by starting the loudspeakers again. This is sending a message to North Korea's armed forces along the DMZ that the South Koreans do not have as much fear and respect for the North Korean regime as the North Korean propaganda makes out. And that's why they're especially allergic, if you will, about this kind of thing. Now, to go to your second question as to why this change has taken place, I just think it's a matter of the South Korean government having very few options. Economically speaking, they've already got the sanctions in place that were imposed after the Cheonan sinking. They don't want to endanger the Kaesong industrial zone, and that really leaves nothing else except to start the propaganda loudspeakers going again.
That's right. And usually North Korea takes pride in its military accomplishments and it's not shy over bragging about them. But this time, why would they deny having planted the landmines that maimed 2 South Korean soldiers?
Well, let's keep in mind North Korea has several propaganda tracks which say different things to different constituencies. So it will sometimes say a very bellicose kinds of things to its own military, while it will strike peace-minded notes for South Korean consumption. Let's remember, by not claiming responsibility for the landmines, it forces the Park administration to investigate what actually happened. That takes a few days, and by the time that's over, there's no more stomach for military retaliation. And let's also remember there are plenty of South Koreans who come up with conspiracy theories after every incident like this. We're already getting some people on the internet claiming it's all been made up by the government. And this is exactly the kind of internal South Korean conflict which Pyongyang is looking for.
So it's very systematic from North Korea, not their first rodeo. They know what they're doing. Well, Professor, North Korea's actions seem more drastic compared to similar periods in the past, what with the joint drills being held and right after initiating the landmine incident. What are some possible reasons for the regime's extra aggressive actions these days?
Well, let's keep in mind it's a military-first regime. That means it justifies itself by flexing its muscles in front of its own citizens and its own military. So this kind of behavior is really not all that strange. It kind of comes and goes. Now, we've been hearing reports that the Kim Jong-un regime is starting to lose support inside the country. And as you know, whenever the leadership feels the need to bolster its popularity, it tries to increase the tension on the peninsula in some way. And I think this is all the more reason now why the Park administration has to walk a pretty fine line with the press. It needs to exercise restraint. It's okay to show firmness, but any hint of triumphalism may well make things worse.
Right. It's sure Pyongyang's military threats sure do comes and goes, and that's why many Koreans here right now, they live with the threat for many years. And thank you so much for your time, Professor, today.
Sure thing.
Ending days of speculation, President Park Geun-hye has decided to attend China's war victory celebrations in Beijing next month. But a formal decision on the president's attendance at the Chinese military parade is yet to be confirmed. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
The presidential office of Cheongwade confirmed that President Park will embark on a 3-day trip to China on September 2nd to attend events marking the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II on the 3rd. She will also meet Chinese President Xi Jinping for summit talks, where North Korea's recent landmine attack in the demilitarized zone and the North's nuclear program will likely top the agenda. In Shanghai, President Park is expected to attend a reopening ceremony for the headquarters of Korea's provisional government during Japan's colonial rule. However, it remains to be seen whether she will attend the Chinese military's parade, the highlight of the war victory celebrations.
We are currently finalizing the details of President Park's trip to China and will make them known at the appropriate time.
While U.S. President Barack Obama and other Western leaders view the parade as a showcase of Beijing's military prowess and will likely skip the ceremonies, President Park will give it serious deliberation considering Korea's relations with its major regional partner, China, and a key ally, the U.S. President Park is expected to take the initiative in Beijing to address diplomacy issues in Northeast Asia and to restore momentum for resuming the long-stalled trilateral summit with China and Japan later this year. If Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe attends the celebrations and progress is made regarding a three-way meeting, it may help narrow historical differences and improve Seoul's relations with Tokyo. President Park's office added there were no signs that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un or any high-ranking official from Pyongyang will attend the event. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Another sticking point surrounding China's war victory celebrations is whether or not North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be in attendance. But according to our Hwang Ji-hye, the young leader will likely stay away from the party.
If North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attends China's war victory celebrations, it will mark his first overseas trip since assuming power in 2011. It will also signal the normalization of strained Beijing-Pyongyang ties and possible progress on North Korea's denuclearization. But the chances of seeing the young leader in China next month are slim. With just 2 weeks left until the celebrations, relations between the two longtime allies remain frosty with no sign of thawing. Besides, Pyongyang has yet to send its RSVP to Beijing. Chinese Foreign Minister Hwang Ji-hye and his North Korean counterpart Lee Soo-yong did not hold a separate meeting at the ASEAN Regional Forum earlier this month. Experts say Kim's absence in China next month will also diffuse hopes for better inter-Korean relations.
Kim's absence will close the window for Beijing to persuade Pyongyang to refrain from any military provocations in time for the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Korean Workers' Party. Tensions will be high from the end of this year and next year.
If Kim decides to attend, some point to the possibility of a surprise meeting between President Park Geun-hye and the North Korean leader. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, former Prime Minister and current opposition party lawmaker Han Myungsoo was convicted this afternoon on charges of receiving illegal political funds in 2007. Korea's Supreme Court upheld an appellate court's 2 years prison sentence for Han. The 70-year-old politician was found guilty of accepting around $750,000 in bribes from a businessman for influence peddling. She denied the accusations and was undergoing trials for the past 5 years. The conviction strips Han of her seat in parliament. She is also the first former prime minister to go to prison. Soon after the ruling, Han leaders and lawmakers of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy pleaded her innocence. They criticized the ruling as political persecution. Han served as the first gender equality minister during the Kim Dae-jung administration and the first ever female prime minister during the Roh Moo-hyun administration. Korea's rival parties agreed to hold the parliamentary inspection of the government offices starting next month. The 3-week audit session will start from September 10th until just before the Chuseok holidays and then will resume on October 1st through 8th. The ruling Saenuri Party wanted to hold the audit session as soon as the September regular session started. The main opposition NPAD agreed to the ruling bloc's demands as the National Assembly also needs to work on budget examinations for next year. However, with only 3 livelihood bills passed thus far and just 2 weeks remaining before the close of the August extraordinary session, concerns are mounting that it will fail to yield any significant results.
Uncertainties in the global economy, especially the cheaper Chinese currency, are putting Korea in a difficult position. And the concerns are being felt, with the country's benchmark Kospi falling 4 days in a row. Shin Se-min has the details.
At a parliamentary committee meeting Thursday, Finance Minister Park Geun-hye said China's devaluation of its currency is putting considerable pressure on the Korean economy. Choy also said the government is preparing various countermeasures to tackle possible downside risks stemming from the cheaper yuan. Reflecting the uncertainties, Korea's benchmark Kospi dropped 1.28% on Thursday to finish at 1,914.55, the lowest level since January this year. That marks the 4th straight day of drop after the index fell below the 1,950 mark on Wednesday. China's weakened currency had the greatest impact on the Korean shares compared to other major world stock markets. Kospi has fallen roughly 3.5% from the time China first lowered its currency last Tuesday, and the tech-heavy Kosdaq also dipped a total of 10.8% during that 6-day period. But the fall was also triggered by a potential rate hike from the U.S. Federal Reserve that has dampened investor sentiment. Although minutes of the Fed's meeting last month show it may be keeping its dovish stance, officials hint the decision to raise interest rates is inching closer. Experts say, however, it's even more difficult to predict what decision the Fed will make on rates next month, as concerns over China's unsettling market and a plunge in global crude prices remain as risks. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
In other news, smartphones are getting bigger and so is the buzz. Korea's Samsung Electronics has officially released not 1, but 2 large-screen models on its home turf. The tech giant hopes the devices will give its flagging smartphone sales a much-needed shot in the arm. Song Ji-sun reports.
1 week after their unveiling at a glitzy press event in New York City, Samsung Electronics' latest phablet models, the Galaxy Note 5 and the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus, hit store shelves in Seoul and across Korea on Thursday. Both devices come with rounded edges, wireless charging, and attractive pricing, with the retail price of a 32GB Galaxy Note 5 dropping below the $900 mark for the first time.
Compared to my Nexus smartphone, I really like the Note 5's design and colors. I've just tried taking photos with it, and the device's processing speed and resolution are impressive.
As well as the new smartphones, the Korean tech giant has also launched Samsung Pay. The mobile payment service enables users to buy things by tapping their smartphone against credit card readers. Looking to get a head start on Apple ahead of the iPhone 6s's expected arrival next month, Samsung sped up the launch by a couple of weeks. Samsung has a firm grip on the global smartphone market, but Apple and Chinese manufacturers have been eating into their share, despite the Korean firm's release of other high-end devices in the first half.
Samsung has loaded its new models with its most advanced technology. It has also improved its supply chain, which came up short in the first half with the Galaxy S6 Edge model. But the outlook for the mobile sector remains dim, as competition with Apple will intensify at the high end of the market. Samsung has better earnings prospects in memory chips, where market conditions are more favorable.
Samsung has also revamped its low-end smartphone lineup in a desperate bid to reverse its dropping share of the global smartphone market. Sales in both premium and low-end categories will be crucial to Samsung's hopes of rebounding from record low profitability in the second half. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
For the top international headlines, we turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus, Thailand continues to search for the bomb blast suspect. 3 firefighters die in Washington, and treasure hunters find hundreds of rare Spanish gold coins.
But first, Sun-ho, could you tell us how far the investigation has come along in Bangkok?
Well, police still don't know the whereabouts of the suspect, but they have ruled out international terrorism. Authorities are now looking for more perpetrators that may have been linked to the deadly attack. For this story, we turn to our Hwang Ji-hye.
Thailand is seeking the help of Interpol to capture the man believed to be responsible for a fatal Bangkok bomb blast this week. Police believe the man is a foreigner, but they're not sure where he's from or if he's left the country. 20 people, including many foreigners, were killed in the blast at the Arirang shrine in downtown Bangkok. Police say as many as 10 people could have been involved in the attack, although it's unlikely they're linked to any terror group.
Security agencies have cooperated with agencies from allied countries and have come to the preliminary conclusion that the incident is unlikely to be linked to international terrorism.
The government says the bombing was designed to wreck Thailand's economy as the shrine is particularly popular with tourists. Police have released a detailed sketch and a warrant for the man they believe planted a bomb on the bench near the shrine. The person in the drawing is fair-skinned with thick black hair, a wispy beard, and black glasses. A $28,000 reward has been offered to anyone who can provide information leading to his arrest. Authorities think the bomber may be part of a network of Thai nationals. Thailand's prime minister has asked the man to turn himself in. Some of the people killed in the attack still have yet to be identified. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
And turning to the U.S., 3 firefighters have died after their vehicle crashed while battling a wildfire in the state of Washington. According to authorities, the wildfires were approaching the town of Twisp. The National Forest Service said the firefighters' vehicle was likely caught by flames after the crash. 4 other firefighters were also injured, but it's not clear whether their injuries are connected to the crash. One man has been taken to a Seattle hospital in critical condition. Governor Jay Inslee requested a federal emergency declaration to help pay for fighting the many wildfires in the state. Recent droughts and heat waves have been the cause of some 100 blazes across the western regions of the United States. And lastly, ending on a high note, if you are a treasure hunter, you might want to go to Florida, where it's been discovered of $4.5 million worth of gold coins from Spanish ships that sunk 300 years ago. The ships were destroyed by a hurricane while traveling from Cuba to Spain. The 350 coins that turned up were close to the shore, buried under the sand. Now, this is the second recent discovery by treasure hunters. In June, around 50 gold coins worth about $1 million were discovered. Treasure hunter Brent Brisbane's company, called 1715 Fleet Queen's Jewels, owns the rights to the wreckage. He contracted a team of hunters to help him with the salvage operation. They'll be paid a portion of the treasure's value after the state of Florida collects 20%. Brisbane says the find also includes 9 rare pieces known as Royal 8 escudos. Only 20 were known to exist before this latest discovery. And that does it for your international news for this hour. I'll see you again tomorrow.
It rained on and off today, and it's still raining in some parts of the country. And it's shaping up to be a rainy Friday tomorrow, and heavy rain clouds from the north will bring downpours to the southern parts of the country. And the southern coastal areas could receive more than 120 millimeters of precipitation, with a potential heavy rain advisory in place for Jeollado and Gyeongsangdo provinces. And the rest of the southern parts will see between 10 to 80 millimeters of rain, whereas central regions will see 5 to 20 millimeters of light rainfall. In fact, rain will fall in Seoul only during the early hours in the morning, with conditions to turn cloudy along with temperatures reaching in the upper 20s. So on that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Seoul will climb up to 28 degrees Celsius, while Daegu and Gwangju get up to 26 and 27, and Busan will top out at 25 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other parts, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 27 and 29, while Dokdo rises to 24. Now, those of you in the southern regions, please beware of heavy rainfall tomorrow. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thanks for staying with us.
We'll be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.